My name's Mark Gatos. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at Nlyte Software, and I want to thank you all for the time you're going to be spending. We are fortunate today, this is the third year in a row that we've done a customer panel here at the Gartner Data Center Conference in beautiful Las Vegas. And the way this is going to go, I'm going to do a short introduction on Nlyte Software, but the key to this show, this particular panel, is our panelists. We are very fortunate to have a great set of panelists today from a wide set of industries. So really, it's going to be a focus on the panel. They're going to talk about their infrastructure, the challenges they face, and what they're doing to sort of deal with the initiatives they have in their organization. So the focus is on them. And at the end, we'll save time for Q&A. So hopefully, if you have any questions, hold on to them, and we'll try to get to them at the end, OK? So let me give you a quick introduction if you're not familiar with Nlyte Software. Nlyte Software is a company dedicated to helping companies manage their computing infrastructure. We help manage infrastructure and processes, whether they're in your data center, whether they're in co-location facilities, whether they're in managed service facilities. We help companies increase the efficiency, reduce costs, be compliant with whatever the compliance initiatives are in your organization. And it's all we do. We were founded over 13 years ago, and it's all we do. And we were founded to help companies do what it is referred to by Gartner as data center infrastructure management. We're on the 9th generation of our technology. We just released it very recently. And as a result, we have these great customers. We're fortunate again. I would use the California term. We are stoked to have our customers here today. And our customers range. They're some of the largest companies in the world. You know their names. Some companies manage 45 data centers from a single instance of Nlyte. But we also have small customers who are focused and serious about their infrastructure. We have one in Seattle that manages 25 racks in a single data room. So we have large customers, we have small, but the key is we are solely focused on the success of those customers. We have over 300 customers around the world, from large to small, and it's all we do is focus on making customers successful with our software. And as a result, we have a 98% customer retention rate. And people often ask, well, how are you different than the other vendors? Well, one, this is all we do. This is our passion. It's what we do. We love helping companies with their computing infrastructure. Second, we have this great, elegant, modern architecture. I'm not going to get into it. It allows you to tie into BMS, into ITSM, into virtualization systems very elegantly. But a key thing is what is on the slide here. We support all the processes within the data center, what we call from doc to decom. Some companies have challenges with power monitoring. They might have challenges with environmentals. They might have challenges with asset management or capacity planning. We support all the processes within the data center. And so companies start with a core pain point and grow from there and get more value from the solution as we continue to increase the value and functionality that our solution has. We have more people in our company focused on DSIM than any other company in the world. For some companies, it's a sideline. It's all we do. And as a result, as I said before, we have a 98% customer retention rate, and we are so fortunate to be able to serve the greatest customers in the world. And we have some of them here today. We're very fortunate, and so I'm now going to turn over to our panel to allow them to introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Michael.
Michael Cafferty, Mercury Insurance. We have 2 data centers, both in California, one southern, one northern. We have about 125 cabinets in the production data center in Southern California and about 60 plus in our DR data center in Folsom. We started implementing Nlyte about 2 years ago, and it's helped us get way better control over inventory control.
And what's the main focus from like on initiatives? What are you guys really focused on? Lowering costs, being more agile? Like what do you?
Just keeping the line in the cage as far as maintaining our inventory asset control, as far as what equipment is where, and now we're getting into the what touches what in the inventory area.
Right. Andy?
I'm Andy Hansen. I work for Herbalife. I'm the data center manager for North America. And within my purview, we have 3 data centers, totaling about 200 racks. And kind of the big initiatives right now is one of the two of the data centers we opened 4 years ago. So a lot of new equipment came in at that time, and so we're about to do a big life cycle refresh.
Great. Melanie?
Hi, I'm Melanie Heimer. I work at Northwestern Mutual, and we're a new customer. We just implemented Nlyte this year. We are managing currently 651 cabinets to do 2 data centers and 2 colo locations. We have a goal to get all our TR closets added into Nlyte as well, which would be about another 350 racks. Our main initiative just is to get a handle on everything we have, where it is. Going through the process of getting everything added into Nlyte, we were able to commission about 15 cabinets worth of decomped hardware that was just sitting there, not being used, not being turned off. So we were able to shut that off and save that electricity. So that's our initiative so far.
Hi, my name is Jim Krabari with Cisco IT. I've been with Cisco 10 years, and prior to that I was with EDS and Pro Systems. Most of my career managing, doing design, build, and operate of data centers. Currently, my team manages a worldwide portfolio, over 24 data centers, thousands of racks. We use DCIM tools, Nlyte specifically, to manage the physical power, space, and cooling of that environment. But we're just beginning. Our real focus is to create the enterprise services platform where we can integrate Nlyte, ServiceNow, and other key tools so that we can create this digitized, simplified environment. And that's really the focus of where we're going with this set of technologies.
Hi, my name is Jim Chu, the data center manager for Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. My team and I directly manages about 15 data centers, so around 700 racks. And our primary goal right now is to consolidate more of that down. And also is to start using Nlyte to manage all our IDCs as well.
Hi, my name is Jake Woolley. I work with the Department of Energy. I'm the program manager for data center optimization. We have about 300 data centers scattered around about 78 locations across the United States. Some have a DCIM capability, but the majority do not. We are under a mandate as part of law and from also the federal government to do optimization and consolidation of our data centers. So we don't expect to keep all of those data centers as we look to consolidate. We do have a requirement to have all our data centers metered and operate in the most efficient manner. And we are looking now, we have a pilot going on with Nlyte to look for a DCIM capability that we could implement across the enterprise for all those organizations and data centers that do not have the capability to use.
Great. So I appreciate, and obviously a broad range of folks with very different challenges, very different sizes, you know, from the U.S. government to Cisco, right? Large, broad swath. My question is, why do you guys do this? Like, maybe I'll turn to James at Cisco. What were you doing before? I mean, anyone who doesn't have a DCIM solution is going to say, well, why am I going to do this? Why am I going to spend money? I'm going to have to justify this project. We're getting by with spreadsheets, or we feel we are. Like, why don't you tell us a little about your story, James?
Well, for us, it's pretty simple. Obviously, spreadsheets aren't scalable and they're not digital. So our CIO, we have a specific strategy around digitization, simplification, extending to the cloud, and using analytics then in that environment to make better business decisions. You know, a very agile environment. And really for us, we used Nlyte and our DCIM tools to make some very strategic decisions. We actually deferred a build of a data center for about $20 million by using the analytics out of these tools. And we also have saved about 7% of our operating costs with consolidation of other platforms as well within that portfolio. So it's been pretty significant for us.
Did you have to do some ROI justification, I assume, to justify the project, or?
No, not really. I mean, the main reason we started with DCIM was to get the physical inventory in place so we could understand our physical footprint, the energy we were spending, Once we understood that, then we could see the data in a different way that allows us to really change our portfolio.
Does anybody else want to talk about?
So for years, I think with everybody here, we've used Visio and Excel.
I think close.
Visio and Excel to manage the assets. And it becomes cumbersome, especially when you've got multiple sites. So with DCIM, you can, if your nomenclature where you're changing just a particular, a couple letters based on where the location is, you can search for all the like assets much quicker within DCIM. And then it makes it easier to determine what you have to replace if you're doing an upgrade.
Yeah.
So that's just one of several ways. Somebody else touched on ServiceNow, and that's something else that we use ServiceNow. So with the workflow, it makes it so much easier to get assets in and assets out.
Okay. And how many, like, did some of you have your own homegrown solutions you'd created? Were you? Visio. Oh, it was Visio.
I used OpenDSIM for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is okay, but not expandable. Not as nice search utilities.
Okay.
We used the OpenDSIM to prove why we needed a commercial product. We were able to show the business value of gathering all that data and what we could do with it by starting down that path.
Yeah, we did the same thing at Cisco. We started off with some in-house tools. We even tried to develop our own internal tool, and we realized it couldn't scale. So then we went off on an analysis to really do a COTS analysis of what was available on the market. We looked at the Magic Quadrant. We went through all of the suppliers in the Magic Quadrant, and we eventually selected Nlyte because of its scalability and usability. So
Great.
That was the key for us.
And what do you think, like, what are sort of the things that you look and as you approach this, what are the pitfalls? What would be sort of your advice to folks in terms of if you're thinking about doing this, here's the one thing you've got to focus on, or are there any sort of advice you have for folks when they're thinking about this? They have their own homegrown solutions, or they're using spreadsheets. Like, what is sort of your experience? Jim, you want to?
Yeah, because for JPLs, we started off without having the decent software in the beginning. So we started looking about 4 or 5 years ago for decent solutions, is actually managing a lot of different projects. What it comes down to is actually when you start using the decent software, it's just a lot of capabilities, and at one time you're trying to get your hands around it. But the best advice I could give everybody is just start with one rack at a time. So work on there and get everything that you need in that one rack and then move on to the next. And then you'll realize this is much more simpler than what it start off with.
Any other, Melanie?
For us, it was sit down and talk about standards, which we did do, and I thought we were all on the same page. But a U in a rack is simply a U in a rack. And when you start talking about cartridges for infrastructure management, fiber, you may have multiple cassettes in one U device, and we had decided how we were going to do that, but yet everyone didn't do it the same way as we're gathering that data. So some of them made 3 entries in the OpenDSIM tool. Then when we tried to import that, we had layers on top of layers of devices stacked on top of each other because people weren't following the standards, even though we talked about that. And you can have discovery tools go and find things, but planning the rack, all the cable management and the infrastructure, those are not discoverable. They're just static devices. So understanding how you're going to plan for those and arrange for that space and setting standards so that everything's in the same and you can duplicate it so it makes your work faster going forward.
Anyone else want to? So ROI always seems to come up. We've talked a lot of clients, and inevitably ROI is this big question. When you're looking at justifying this type of project, is it power savings? Is it agility? Is it, like, how would you say for your organization the key thing, knowing where your assets are? I mean, from your perspective, Andy.
One thing I discovered after the fact and wish I had realized beforehand was the relationship with finance and tracking assets. Before on the old spreadsheet method or OpenDSIM, you didn't necessarily have your asset tags in there. You didn't have that kind of standardized data. Now, what I've found out, and it would be great if you need to put it into your ROI, is that if when I get the yearly audit hey, what's the status of these assets? I give them a report within the day. I just export and with the correct fields, and there you go. That's been a really unexpected boon for me.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, for us at Cisco, we were trying to first establish a good critical inventory that we could then build upon. And that critical inventory was key for us because that allowed us to see, using data analytics, the portfolio in a different way. So for us, it was really about seeing the data differently, whether it was at the RU level, whether it was at the domain level, compute, storage, network. But we could see it differently once it was in the tool, and we could report on it differently than we ever have before.
Jake, from a government, or Jim, what are your thoughts?
For JPL, what happens is a lot of times is we're actually a little bit more different than the standard industries. We're more of a, I'm running more of a co-location on our self-center because all the different projects and different flight projects will actually bring their own equipment coming in. So the JPL has a whole asset database of every piece of equipment that's actually purchased in the government. So unfortunately, to get the understanding of what's in that room or what's in the certain locations, you're getting a lot of garbage in that data. So that's why we actually started looking at saying, so we need to get it in Nlyte to actually just understand what's actually the equipments and stuff that's in the room that's associated with different projects. So that way we understand these equipment belongs to this project and that equipment belongs to who, and who are the support peoples that's responsible to support these, and who's the managing project managers and who's also managing these equipments. So that's why we're actually, JPL is looking at using the DSIM when we first started off, is understanding because now we're becoming more co-location for all our different projects, internal customers, and not understanding exactly what is the customers bringing in, not until it's actually showing up on the dock. So the DSIM allows us to actually put everything together and to actually present it easier and understanding, so given also chart, kind of looking back and says, okay, this is how much floor space you're using, this is the power you're using for the different projects.
From an enterprise perspective, like within the DOE, I mean, our cybersecurity is a major driver, even for considering the DCIM capability. Knowing where the assets are, knowing what the assets are, and they're scattered. I mean, not all data centers are created equal. Some are, I mean, we have everything from scientific computing to high-performance computing to, SCADA systems, and I'm sure that's, somewhat common in many, major organizations, particularly government organizations. So we're spread out with a lot of different contractors. We're, we're not a one organization per se. I mean, the funding comes in and it goes down to different program offices. So there are a variety of data centers, and be able to, and not all of them are managed equally either. So we're looking for, obviously, as the Department of Energy, want to have energy savings. Even though that's not part of my IT budget, it's still a part of the department and taxpayer money to save energy, but then also to ensure that the data center are being managed efficiently, and also to assist as we look to move in which we already have workloads, but from an enterprise perspective, look to move to migrate to the cloud. And knowing what you have and the assets and the workloads that are necessary as you do the rationalization, the DCIM is kind of key to understanding that when you look at it from an enterprise perspective.
Yeah. So you guys are generating a lot of data, and one of the things I sort of heard some of you want to integrate into ServiceNow or some of the other ITSM vendors. Who wants the data? Like and I don't even know what the answer is from any of you in terms of like, is the information siloed inside your DSIM solution, or are you already sharing it with finance or these other organizations? Who wants the data besides facilities?
I can't answer that, everyone.
Everybody, well, that's good.
So for us, the initial customer, if you will, initial stakeholder was our service owners in the data center, compute, storage, network, the traditional ones. But then we also had the finance team that wanted to see the same data, not only just the assets or the location of those assets, but the net book value, the depreciation of those assets as well.
Yeah, are they looking at warranties? Are they looking at service contracts? Or?
Yeah, so for us, we've integrated ServiceNow and Nlyte together. So what we're really trying to build is an end-to-end life cycle, not just what's housed in the data center, but how new equipment gets ordered through our e-store, how it then gets sent through our product catalogs, into DCIM, into Nlyte, and then Nlyte replicates that location data to ServiceNow, and we put all of those analytics up on a dashboard for service owners, for financial managers to see, and it's highly valuable.
Jake?
For JPLs, a lot of this is when we started using the DSIM, different projects actually has a requirement to maintain documentation of all the interconnects, cables, and power requirement for the. As we're putting this stuff into the DSIM, they realize that now their documentation is actually outdated, because now this is within the DSIM software. This is actually real-time documentation rather than point-in-time documentation. So now there's a lot of different organizations at JPLs is actually looking at using DSIM to just point back the reference back to the DSIM software for their documentation requirements.
We do have, well, a lot of the sites and the organizations within the department have their own, CMDB, their configuration management database for how they manage the different assets and things like that. So as part of what we were looking for is also a capability here, and Nlyte has that with the different plugins to be able to interface with a variety of CMDBs.
Okay. Did you want it? Okay. So you guys are on one side of an equation. On the other side, you have public cloud, right? I mean, everybody talks about public cloud. reInvent was here. What are your thoughts in terms, from your organization's perspective? Obviously, you're making investments in your own infrastructure. Are there conversations about costs on the data center side versus running resources in the cloud? Maybe it's for Department of Energy, that's not an option. What are your sort of thoughts in terms of how you're looking at your providing a service to the business or to the organization, in the case of the federal agencies, compared to the Amazons, the Azures? Are there conversations about where workloads should go and what the costs are or what the requirements are? Just I'm sort of winging this one at you guys, so what do you think?
For us, cost always comes into every discussion we have, but for us, it's really about agility and speed. So if there is a application owner that wants to drive a new application to the cloud, we do have internal process for what are the right security guardrails, how do they do it, et cetera. But the cost issue really is involved in every optimization discussion we have, because data centers are a large investment. We want to make sure we maximize those investments. Sure. And that's the focus of what we try to do every day, is maximize the footprint, maximize the energy spend, because that's within our control.
Okay. Anyone else want to?
I think for us, Herbalife is a pretty unique business model. And so a lot of the compute is highly customized Oracle databases and things. They would be a little difficult to send to the cloud. And what we're seeing is sort of the low-hanging fruit, things that can be sort of commoditized, like HR applications. Those have gone out.
Yeah. And I think even from Gartner, they'll say your lowest cost approach may not be to go to the public cloud, right? It may often be to have your own resources. So I can understand that, especially if you have very specific needs for your application, that you can often spin those up more efficiently in-house. Did you have something else you wanted to say, James? Okay. So what's the future, right? So you're all sort of at different sort of stages in the path, going down the path of DSIM, from relatively new to more experienced. I think, James, you said you've done 3 different DSIMs at different organizations, right? As well as Cisco sounded like they had their own homegrown solution until they turned to Nlyte. So what's the future? Like, is where you think you folks are going with your solution?
Automate workflow, automate workflow, automate workflow.
Okay.
It's all about programmatic infrastructure, digitization for us. And really we're trying to take it a step at a time. So our MVP may only have the physical inventory, the space, the power, but then the next thing we go to our service owners and we say, what do you want next? And we try to do it in a real safe, agile approach.
Okay. Michael?
The Neo tool, integrating, we just recently acquired the Neo tool, the module that's going to plug into Nlyte.
Energy.
The network energy optimization, and Nlyte energy optimization. And we're very excited because now we're going to be able to monitor the power really at a granular level within Nlyte. But more to that, we're going to extend it out to, because we have so many remote sites where we have call centers or branches, and we're going to be able to track that and monitor that at the same time, and as well as complete the CMDB integration as they've done down there.
Well, sounds like a lot on your plate. I think Jake at the end.
Well, our future is hopefully fewer data centers, and those that we do keep are being well managed, both operational efficiency and energy efficiency. And we also have the capability then to know what assets we have in the data centers. We're able to, as necessary, report it and maintain, dashboard. But the key is at the data center level to ensure the data center managers have the tool to efficiently be able to manage their data centers.
Okay. So, go ahead, Jim.
Actually, for us, this is actually getting more integration with different monitoring tools around the other areas. So that gives us the single pane of glass to actually look at the equipments inside, such as the OS monitoring.
Is that for issue resolution, or what are you really trying to get to?
Get to the point where we actually could understand all the applications, because right now we have a lot of equipment that may or may not be used in 100% efficiency. So the different projects has a different requirements for their monitoring capabilities and what they do provide. So we're actually looking at to integrate our EM7 into it to give us a better understanding of what's the hardware and software-wise what is being used on every piece of equipment.
Okay.
Just one final thing on the future for Cisco. We're trying to take what we build in the data centers, this platform, this enterprise service platform of Nlyte and ServiceNow, and we've integrated with other tools as well for analytics, for event management, et cetera. And then we want to roll that out to our field sales offices. So we want to enable the same capabilities that we have in the data center in remote offices, campuses, branch locations, so that we can have a full inventory of all of our assets worldwide.
How many of you do have edge use cases? Are you running anything remotely? It sounds like Cisco you do.
We have over 700 offices worldwide in addition to our data center.
And they all have assets you want to know?
They all have IT assets in them, yes.
Anyone else have edge use cases? Not 700 offices, certainly. Okay. So last question before we open it up for Q&A. I'd like you each to sort of say, okay, sort of back to if somebody in the audience is looking and thinking, we've thought about doing this, we've wanted to for years, we haven't done it. What's your advice, to do so? What is sort of in your mind the critical factor, to take the plunge, and what's your advice, how, as somebody's just approaching the problem and saying, yeah, we'd like to do this, what is your advice? What's the thing you'd say, hey, I didn't expect this to be as important as it was, and it was. So if you have some sort of aha moment, I'd love to hear from all of you. We'll start at the end with Jake, if you're put you on the spot. Okay. Or Jim, do you want to take it?
The aha moment for us is actually looking at the software and the system. When we're getting so many different projects moving their equipment into our data center, and we're sitting there looking at it and says, okay, how are we going to get our hands around all this? How difficult it is, and looking at it with our old tools and whatnot, is to actually understand it. So as we started implementing the DSIMs, we're looking at it as actually now thinking back, is why do we ever use the previous tool beforehand? This DSIMs is to give us everything that we're actually looking for, and to be able to actually give us more capability than what we initially conceived. So the understanding is that you may not understand what you have right now, or you may not understand what you may need, but as soon as you're using it, then you realize there's a lot more capability that expands out, and you go, now I could do this with this data, and now I could actually present a different way to different managements and looking at a certain point of view.
Okay. Jake?
Well, we didn't necessarily have a aha moment here. I guess it's when we opened up and saw the mandate come from on high, from Congress, that says there are certain performance metrics we expect, as far as data center operation. They said in PUE standards, 100% metering. We do have certain mandates which I guess, required of government agencies in order to meet. But the key here is truly it's a cultural change and understanding, be able to work with organizations to understand not just trying to comply with the mandate, but understand the value add that it does to it gives to the organization, and be able to better manage your data center assets and improve, and again, with the focus on trying to improve both the energy and operational efficiency, but also our cybersecurity posture.
Great. James?
Well, for us, there's probably a couple. The first one is, and I'm probably repeating myself, but data analytics. We discovered things about our data centers that we didn't know. You know, number of RUs that were utilized and not utilized, how power was being distributed and consumed. All those key elements gave us the ability to see things differently in our data centers. The other thing I think that we learned was that there is a key integration of these platforms that's going to continue. So data enrichment, it is important. As you take that first step, that first MVP, maybe you won't have all of the completeness in your records or in your database, but you have to take a step at a time. I don't think that there is any silver bullet, or you have to do the hard work as well, importing the data, scrubbing the data, making sure that the data is valid, because if the data is no good, your consumers won't use it. So you have to make sure that while you're building this system, importing the data, that the data accuracy is at a high level.
Okay. Melanie, any thoughts?
I think it's a big project when you're starting out with DSIM. So you have to take a look at and plan what is your biggest headaches, what issues do you want to address first, and try to tackle them one at a time. If you need to know your inventory, work on that first, get that up and functioning and share that, and then maybe go to the energy and the UMCB implementations and all the integrations. But pick small parts so that you can get some wins along the way, show the business value. If you try to do the whole thing at one time and not share it with anybody until you're completely done, you never get done. It just seems like it's constantly a work in progress. We're always, oh my God, now we can do this, we can add this functionality. We can do this now and add this functionality. We feel, my team and I, that we're never going to be done, because we're constantly looking to make things better and improve the data and what the tool can do to help us and the infrastructure teams support the data centers.
Right. Thank you, Melanie. Andy?
I think there's a little bit of a cultural change for us. We had to to really train the technicians the importance of getting as much information into the product as possible. I mean, ultimately, it saves your time to repair. You're not going to be scrambling around. You're going to know exactly where you need to go, what you need to do. That was a bonus and a win for us, I think.
Okay. Michael?
I don't think we didn't have an aha moment. I know that as the management of the data center and the operators and the people that work in the data center day in and day out, they see a huge value in the tool. And the people that support the equipment, it was a learning curve. It was an adjustment, because for so many years, people were used to just looking at Visio or keeping their own isolated documentation. But once people started understanding the power of the tool, then it was a wave of acceptance. The other thing I can't stress it enough, with ServiceNow, and somebody over here mentioned workflow, if you have, we have a change control meeting that we have twice a week to track changes in the infrastructure, both on the application and on the hardware side. And when you integrate those two and through the workflow, and you can manage from cradle to grave the asset and controlling that, it just becomes even more powerful.
So you mentioned people. I have 1 minute before I go to Q&A, because I wanted to leave 10 minutes for Q&A. Were there any turf wars in deploying between facilities? Some of you are laughing. I mean, were there issues of people having turf wars of facilities versus IT versus data center team?
I think it was just resistance. That's it, because
change, or
engineers, bless their heart, are stuck in their ways. And so it's, at least in our organization, it's not a bad thing. It's just they're used to doing something a certain way, and to give them a new tool that they don't have physical control over was a learning curve. But once they adopted to it, and I wouldn't say everybody jumped on board right away, but it was a slow progression. But then once it happened, it's become widely accepted now.
Anyone else want to comment on turf wars or?
Ours was maybe a little bit of a reverse of that. It's like we had this data, and like you mentioned earlier, other teams all had their own data, and then there got to a point where the server teams like, hey, I'm looking for this server. Their records were not accurate. They came to us and we had it, and now they've stopped tracking that themselves and they just use our data. So that's the one thing I think that's hard to capture when you're trying to get back to your organization about what your return on investment is how do you capture the work that's not being done by other teams now because they can rely on this one source of data.
Okay. So we would like to open it up to Q&A if anyone has any questions in the audience. Karen can run across the length of the room if anybody has any questions for folks. Do you see one, Karen? She's on the move. All right.
I wanted to see how far I could make her run.
You gave her a workout for the day.
Yeah. So change management, as assets are brought in and out of the data center, how is that tracked? Is it all manual update, or is there a discovery portion and agent involved?
If you own ServiceNow, and I don't know if Nlyte plays well with other help desk or service delivery systems.
I'm jumping in. Yes, we work with.
But
BMC,
we are a
HP,
ServiceNow
Sherwin.
shop, and the integration with ServiceNow is seamless. It's pretty straightforward. So we can track the asset through our change control. We use ServiceNow. A ticket is opened. You use workflow that tells the operator this system has been targeted for movement or retirement or installation. Then the operator does the work, updates the ticket, then the workflow is then moved to the next stage, whether it's closed out or then it goes to the management for approval and acknowledgement, and then the ticket's closed.
James?
For Cisco IT, we have connected the workflow from ordering through the installation. So when a piece of equipment gets ordered, once it shows up on the dock, it gets scanned with an RFID scan. That scan goes into the asset database, and then the asset sits in storage. There's a reservation that's automated for the data center, and when the layer 1 resource goes to install that piece of gear, they know that it goes in that rack. They scan it again, and now it's implemented. And of course, there's change management tickets and configuration management updated as a part of that.
Yeah, we found for some organizations it starts bottom up when the item comes into the back dock, it's scanned, Nlyte says where it goes, and then that information is fed up into the CMDB. We have the opposite happen also with some clients. It really depends on the organization.
And as a regular practice, all of our data centers, we scan all of the assets on a quarterly basis, just to keep the inventory accurate.
Okay. Jim, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so the question was how does it keep track of that? So as you bring equipment in, then you guys just are working on it, then you actually generate work orders for the process that's in there. So you could do this as a move. So you could do decommission, and that will keep track inside the Nlyte software that actually will be able to track it all the way back and forth to see when is that equipment. So you can actually have the equipment that's on the recycle capabilities so that it can be reused by other divisions as well. And that brings back that equipment back into the system. Or as in our case, when we decommission, then that gets pulled out and then sent out to be accessed out to in the public sector.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, we got one right here. Oh, didn't make Karen run far for that one, though.
Yes. What percentage of automation the tool can give you for the maintenance of the inventory, and what is your head count dedicated for that maintenance?
We couldn't hear the question. It was sort of echoing. Can you?
It's what percentage of automation can you get from the tool for the maintenance of your inventories, and what is your head count dedicated for that maintenance?
Anybody want to?
So there's several ways we maintain stock rooms, and again, stock rooms are equipment that haven't been deployed, so they're not discoverable by ServiceNow. So therefore, what we've done is we scan all those assets going into the stockroom. We integrate that data into the ServiceNow dashboard, so you can see not only what's installed on the data center floor, but you can see what's in stock. So that the future stock is visible in an asset dashboard. So it is automated.
And was there a question in there about the resources dedicated to that? Or?
Yeah, it's, what I want to find out is if you have to dedicate a percentage of your headcounts into the maintenance manual, or is 100% automated, and if you dedicate some...
So it sounds like a question about people, how much resources you're dedicating towards the DSIM solution itself.
We have a small operations team that uses.
Cisco does something small. That's good to hear.
Yeah, no, well, nothing in Cisco is real small, but at least in my mind, it's small. It's a couple hundred folks worldwide, but they're not full-time dedicated. We've trained them on the tool. They use the tool to do installations, decommissions. They follow the procedures for inventory, and really, the stockroom management is really, the return on investment is about level of stock, the amount of net book value in stock, and the days in service. So we track those two metrics to make sure that equipment is not being depreciated in a room somewhere. It's being depreciated on the data center floor in service.
Anyone want to comment on the general maintenance?
I think if I understand the questions is on that side. Actually, the maintenance of the software itself is actually doesn't really, it's actually very self-maintenance in that sense. But what it does is to run the application to make sure everything's up to date and running that, it takes about 1 FTE for us to actually run the application.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, we have a data center technician staff of about 8, and they all participate equally. They're all trained on it, and they all know how to do the inputs. And
so they're not dedicated
correct,
to
they're not
DSIM,
dedicated
got other
to the
tasks.
software. Yeah, there's not a lot of back-end maintenance you have to do with this product.
I do have a team that does capacity planning and management, in addition to some of the things that they do with this tool. So there's about 8 or 10 that are in capacity planning for the data centers.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Do we have one more?
Yeah, I just have, it's like a 2-part question. My first question.
So you speak into the microphone, it's tough to hear, we're getting an echo.
Okay.
Thank you.
My first question is, what challenges did you encounter in building the database instances? And the other question is Nlyte tied into your business management system? And what's your experience to that?
The first part of the question, the biggest challenge in building the data is making sure that everybody does the data the same way. When you're looking at even a server, do you put HP, DL380, or do you put Cisco and the name of the model? Some people would put the model and then Cisco. Some people didn't put the maker at all. You know, when you go to import it, that all matters. So it's getting everyone on the same page, doing things the same way. And even though we talked about it and we thought we were doing it the same way, people understood that differently. So spending the time, maybe doing a little small sample instead of letting them go and do, you know, they spent a whole 4 hours and did a whole bunch of racks, and they're different than the next person. The second part of what was the second part?
The business management system.
Oh, the business management system. We tied into, we had multiple business management systems, one very old. We weren't able to tie into that yet. We did have a Johnson Control Medicine system, and we did tie that into the Neo add-on to Nlyte, and it works very well. And we're getting alerts now and everything through that system. And it took maybe an hour. We talked about it, and then working with JCI took a little bit longer, and then the implementation between Neo and the JCI system took, I think, an hour and a half. And then some configuration of how we wanted to see those alerts in Neo took maybe another 3 hours.
Yeah, I would just say that I would just reemphasize that the standardization is key. we found that we had the same problem. Data normalization wasn't there. We had to normalize our data, especially for supplier and models and those kind of things. So I think that's a key first step, is to get that data set, start looking at it, normalizing it. And there are bulk upload capabilities in Nlyte, so you can upload a data set pretty quickly, get it imported into the tool. So that's a good feature.
Yes. So thank you for coming along. I want to thank our panel. I really appreciate them. And everyone, have a great show. Thank you.